Welcome back to the show, folks. This is Mike Kegley here with Larry Smith, Brad Sturdy. We have producer Tony Cordero, and a little bit of a special treat. You can find Big Sports Radio on the Believe Podcast Network, and we talk to a lot of the guys who are insiders across the Big Ten. Today, we're going to be talking Michigan State with the two gentlemen who run the only podcast. We have Austin Smith and John Kirby. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Thank you.
So as we set up this Big Ten season, of course, we got 4 new schools coming from the West Coast, 18 teams. We don't have divisions. Michigan State is picking up the pieces after an interesting tenure. Tell us, what are the expectation level that Michigan State fans and more importantly, what are the coaching staff? What's their level of expectation for this season?
I could start. Well, I think picking up the pieces is a good way to frame it. Honestly, I think for a large segment of the fan base, it can't get any worse than it was last year. That was about. And listen, I've been watching Michigan State football long enough to have seen some previously bleak times as well. And last year was about as bleak as it got. But all of that being said, you know, with a new season and a new head coach and a whole lot of new players at important positions, I think there's some guarded optimism. Jonathan Smith was, in my opinion, probably the best hire they could have made. Michigan State's brand has always been winning games with under-recruited players and, you know, when they've been at their best, playing smart, run-heavy, short passing game, control the clock, play good defense type football. And that's what Jonathan Smith teams do. You know, if you look at what DJU did last week with Florida State versus what he did a year ago with Oregon State, you know, it's gives us another reason to get excited that maybe there's some extra magic in this coaching staff. So yeah, I think guarded optimism is probably the way that I would describe it.
Yeah, we're getting back to our roots here. I think a lot of people, Michigan State fans, really identified with the Mark D'Antonio years, the way that the team went about things. A lot of people, you know, had tied some of their self-identity to that. And then we transitioned to a completely different style, one that was embraced by the community, but certainly something that maybe we weren't. You know, we were trying to be something we weren't. We wanted to be it. And, you know, got a little ahead of our skis. So some unfortunate other things happened. But as Austin said, you find a guy that has, you know, kind of talking the same talk and walking the same walk as the last guy who had great success here. So there's a lot of hope being placed in that specific area.
You know, college football has certainly changed in the last 20 years. These days, when you talk about a team, you kind of have to start the quarterback. And football games are still won and lost in the trenches. But these days, if you don't have a quarterback, you're really lost. Has that position been solidified, do you think, in this offseason? And are they ready to kind of move forward and you know, make something happen on offense from that position?
Yeah, I think that's arguably outside of the coaching staff. Maybe even because of that, or maybe it does outsize that, but that's been the biggest acquisition of Michigan State's offseason from a personnel perspective. And it comes in the form of Aidan Chiles, who is again, it's a testament to what Jonathan Smith has done in his career, that he was able to convince a top 60 overall recruit in his class just 2 years ago to go to Corvallis, Oregon, to not start, but to back up another quarterback. And, you know, he came along with Smith to East Lansing, part and parcel, kind of a package deal. And I think, again, if you want to talk about why there's reason for excitement, that's probably number one. I mean, Chiles had offers from all over the country, probably could have gone just about anywhere he wanted when he put his name into the portal, but instead, you know, chose to follow his head coach, come to Michigan State. And there's never really been a question that he's going to be the guy from the day that he, you know, signed the proverbial dotted line to become a Spartan. And I think what's awesome about it is that Smith has just placed such intense trust in him, and there's such a great relationship there. And we've seen, again, go back to the D'Antonio and Connor Cook days, to go way back. D'Antonio and even, Kirk Cousins. Lots of there was a great quarterback head coach relationship there when Michigan State's been at its best, and there's reason to have hope for the same this year.
A lot of the season will rely on the ceiling of Aidan Chiles, and that's a big thing to ask when you have an 18-year-old who has never had a true start. As Austin mentioned, he was good enough to warrant series in almost all games, third series, I believe, of every game at Oregon State behind DJU. And there were fans at Oregon State who, despite the success of the Beavers that year, wanted to see more of it, because he just brings a completely new element to the field. And so to get him, as Austin mentions, was huge, and maybe even bigger, is that he was named captain at 18 years old. And so he is carrying quite the load here for the Michigan State Spartans.
This year, you've got a totally different, schedule that teams are dealing with. And with the influx of talent from the West Coast, you're not going to have a total amount of run-focused, beat you up at the line of scrimmage type of offenses. What kind of defense is Michigan State going to have this year? As it seems like in the Big Ten, and I think maybe USC will find this out, but I don't think you can just play offense in the Big Ten.
No, I would strongly agree with that. So what Michigan State did is they hired Minnesota's defensive coordinator, Joe Rossi, to fill that same position at Michigan State. Obviously really exciting for MSU to be able to convince somebody like that, who's had a really successful career in the same conference, to take a lateral move, to really take a career, somewhat of a risk, to come over and be a part of something new. Minnesota's defenses, I don't have the stats in front of me, but have been surprisingly stingy actually under Rossi. He plays a little bit more of a 3-man front, I think, than MSU fans are typically used to seeing. So they will take some adjusting there. It's going to rely more on, kind of the D linemen holding their gaps, as opposed to trying to get upfield, which I think is what Michigan State fans are probably more used to. So a lot of adjustments from a visual perspective. And if anything, there's probably is a little bit of concern as to what that defensive line looks like. Again, while they won't be probably facing as many run-heavy offenses as they have in the past, with the exception of probably the Michigans of the world. There's still just a level of talent that I'm not sure is there for them to compete with those, upper echelon teams coming into the conference.
Yeah, all eyes will be on the defensive backfield, as well, as it was one of the worst units, not only in the country, but Michigan State history. So anything is progress at this point. Fans are hopeful just to something fresh. It can only go up.
Now, you guys went to Michigan State, love Michigan State, cover Michigan State. From an outsider's perspective, I have to ask, is there any thought of, do Michigan State fans wonder what could have been if you could have hung on to Nick Saban, if he hadn't have decided to leave? Does that ever cross your minds about what might have been for the Spartans?
I mean, we'd be lying if we said it didn't. When you get to say, I think we've kind of always, we've kind of got like a running bit on our show where we love to claim people that were at one point in time associated with the university, even if they didn't finish their careers there. Nick Foles is a great example. Went to Michigan State, never really played, won a Super Bowl. We're celebrating that for Michigan State, just because we can. And I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Saban for that reason as well. Getting, the old pictures of him and the big glasses and the starter jackets are, kind of classics in our circle. So yeah, of course you could play that game, but, when you go on to see what he did at LSU and Alabama, it's, you kind of feel like his story was always going to end up at one of those all-time universities. As much as I love Michigan State, it's, try not to beat ourselves up about it too much.
Yeah, you saw that come to life very recently. MSU, as an organization or a university fan base, said never again. We're never going to be a stepping stone again. and we will pay as much as it takes to never be a stepping stone again, even if it's the wrong move. It turned out to be the wrong move, but that was the whole point. Is we're certainly gonna lose an all-timer. We can never let it happen twice.
Yeah.
So if not for Saban, wouldn't have been Tucker contract, huh?
You see how these things all come together, butterfly effect.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm an Illini fan, so we had to watch Bill Self go to Kansas. So we don't have too much on each other. The question that I have is from September 28th, when Ohio State comes to town, followed by a game at Oregon, then a merciful week off, and then Iowa comes to town for homecoming, and then the week after, the dreaded blue of Michigan on the road. What are we going to find out about this Michigan State team during that 5-week streak?
That's as brutal a 5-week streak as I can remember. MSU.
Outside of what I see Florida doing their last 6 games, which
sure.
I've never seen anything like that.
Bananas.
But this is about as correct. I mean, thankfully there's a bye week in there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it actually, to me, I'm going to learn more about where Michigan State's going before we even get to that stretch, because they play Maryland before that. It's open with Florida Atlantic, who is not a joke of a team. Tom Herman has been a big head coach of multiple huge organizations or huge universities. They go on the road to play Boston College the week before they host Ohio State. So I think we'll learn a lot before they even hit that streak or that stretch. But if I'm looking for one thing in there, it's hopefully at least one win. But it's also, I think one of the biggest issues with what happened with Mel Tucker teams is they just, when the wheels fell off, there was no coming back. They'd lose. I mean, I think they lost 49-0 to Michigan. It was just blowouts. I'm looking for a more narrow margin, some level of, discipline, stick-to-itiveness, a game plan, just something to hang our hats on that we can, so we can hang in these games in the future. But yeah, I would like one win out of there, preferably against Michigan, if I had to pick.
We'll see what Jonathan Smith's made of. After that run, you're going to have to pick up the pieces. And can you put together enough wins on the back end of the schedule to make a bowl, or will the team quit? We're going to find out what Jonathan Smith's all about. Looking forward to it.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate you coming on to Big Sports Radio. Again, we had Austin Smith and John Kirby. You can find them on the Believe Network. If you are a Michigan State fan, you will want to find the only podcast that is something that Michigan State fans don't have to have explained to them. Other people in the Big Ten might need to have a little bit of a primer, but if you're a Michigan State fan, you should be subscribing. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show. And folks, we will be right back after these messages.